The shocking confession of the wife to the millionaire, disguised as a male beggar during the ride. David never thought a single night could shatter everything. Already drenched in alcohol and doubt, he was barely holding on to control when he found that tiny, crumpled card stuffed deep inside Emily's designer purse. Anthony Smith. The name flashed in his mind like a warning siren. Who was Anthony? Why had Emily hidden the card? Questions twisted in his gut like knives. Determined and trembling, David crafted a desperate plan. If he couldn't trust his own world, he'd step out of it, literally. He turned to disguise, stripping away his silk suits, his polished watch, his millionaire image. He became someone invisible, a taxi driver roaming dark city streets, a shadow among the forgotten. His hands, though steady at the wheel, shook with the weight of the secret he hunted. That night, the rain hammered the asphalt like a frantic heartbeat. The yellow cab's engine sputtered. Suddenly at the curb, Emily got in. Her perfume hit him, a sweet cloud that once promised forever, but now tasted like betrayal. She didn't recognize him, the worn-out man behind the wheel. David's heart pounded so loud he thought it might betray him. As the city lights blurred past, he heard her voice, soft, raw, almost cracked under the weight of a secret too heavy to carry. Against all reason, she began to confess. Not to a stranger, but as if the words had been gagging inside her for years. It was her past, Chicago's darkest corners, where hope was scarce and survival demanded masks. Emily's upbringing wasn't the polished story she'd sold him. No Ivy League halls or privileged beginnings. Instead, screeching sirens, empty cupboards, and those streets that eat dreams hungrily. She'd pretended, oh, how she pretended, to be someone worthy of the life she longed for, of David. A lie sown from pain and fear. David's chest convulsed. How had he missed the shadows behind her radio? The confession spilled into the cramped cab, dangling between them like a live wire. His mind sprinted, heart splitting, and tears tracing silent tracks down his cheek. The woman he loved, or thought he did, was a ghost sculpted by past pain. And now she was confessing to a beggar, a stranger, the man who once held her world in his palms. Was this love or betrayal? The lines blurred until there was only raw, tangled truth and the aching pulse of secrets long buried. But then, just as the rain softened, a sudden knock on the taxi window startled them both. Outside stood a figure, shadowed and unreadable. A whispered name escaped David's lips. Anthony Smith. Who was he? And what did he hold against Emily's past and their future? The night had more secrets yet to unfold, and David's journey was just beginning. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss out on any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. David's breath hitched as the figure outside the taxi remained shrouded in rain and shadows. He turned to Emily, whose face had turned pale, the confession still heavy between them. The name Anthony echoed in his mind, a thunderclap of dread. Emily, who is he? David barely whispered, terror crawling up his spine. But she wasn't answering. Emily's eyes were wide, darting between David and the stranger, a combination of panic and recognition flashing across her features. "We need to go," she exclaimed, her voice a frayed whisper that surfed on desperation. With a sharp nod, David slammed the gear into drive, and the cab lurched forward, tires splashing through puddles like they were racing against fate. But the unknown figure didn't move. Instead, he stepped closer, and the streetlight caught his face, illuminating a twisted smile that sent chills racing down David's arms. Suddenly, the horn blared. A deafening screech cracked like thunder, and David jolted, startled. As he turned to see what happened, he caught a glimpse of Emily reaching for something hidden in her purse. A flash of a small blade, glinting in the faint interior light. "Emily, don't!" The warning tore from his lips, but it was too late. With a swift motion, she pulled the knife, the metal reflecting the moonlight. "I can't let him do this!" she cried, and David's heart plunged. "Who?" he shouted, voice rising above the chaos. That's when Anthony pounded on the window, demanding answers. "You think you can just run, Emily? You can't escape your past," he hissed. And before David could react, the man yanked open the cab door with a force that felt like the ground falling beneath them. In that shocking moment, the world around them froze. David saw anger. Emily saw fear. And then, the truth broke wide open. "Enough! You don't understand," Emily shouted, her tone raw, trembling. "I wanted to protect you." "Protect me? From what?" David felt the weight of betrayal crushing him. "What are you hiding?" He stared into her eyes, searching for the woman he thought he knew. Suddenly, Anthony lunged forward, but it wasn't at Emily. With a deep, menacing laugh, he turned to David, complete with a twisted grin, a cruel alchemy of rage and triumph. "You really think she loves you?" he scoffed. "She's just using you. You're her ticket to something bigger." David staggered back, his heart pounding in sync with the downpour outside. "What are you talking about?" He struggled to breathe, prepared for a fight, but too stunned to think straight. "Open your eyes. She's been playing you all along, acting like she's some victim. But she's the queen of the game, David. You think you're in love? You're just a pawn." With those cruel words, everything shattered. A splintering revelation hung in the air, like a guillotine. David's mind raced through the memories, the laughter, the quiet moments. They twisted, reconstructed into a dark prism that reflected deceit instead of affection. Emily's face twisted with something. Shame? Anger? No longer the radiant image of love. Her facade cracked like glass before him. David searched for the truth in her eyes, but all he saw was the storm. And then the ground seemed to tilt. A sudden explosion echoed down the street, a blinding flash illuminating the night. A car had collided close by, metal crumpled, shards flying, like the very fabric of their lives ripped apart. He turned back just in time to see Emily darting past him, slipping through Anthony's grasp. "Emily," he called, but it was lost in the chaos. She vanished into the torrential rain, leaving behind only questions that burned like acid in his gut. David was alone with the darkness and the aftermath. Trust shattered, relationships exposed, and the world spun out of control. What had she really? And would he ever retrieve what had been lost in the storm? The echoing sounds of sirens filled the air. The real journey was just beginning. David stood there, the rain pounding on the roof of the cab, a symphony of chaos drowning out the sirens wailing in the distance. His heart raced, mind spiraling. Emily had slipped away like smoke, leaving him with nothing but shadows and doubt. He turned to where Anthony had been, fists clenched, breaths coming in ragged bursts. "Where did she go?" he muttered to himself, panic rising like bile in his throat. Suddenly, a deafening explosion echoed in the street. David flinched, eyes wide. Metal and glass erupted nearby. People screamed, running, some clutching their heads, some frozen in shock. The air filled with acrid smoke, mingling with rain, and David instinctively ducked. Then came a shout. Out of the chaos, a deep voice cut through like a knife. "Get down!" Before David could react, A massive figure surged through the haze. Grab. Get to safety. The man bellowed, his eyes fierce against the backdrop of swirling debris. David recognized him. An old friend from his college days, Mark, now a firefighter, rugged and commanding. Relief washed over him, but it was quickly swept away by dread. "Emily," he yelled, scanning the chaos for her face. "She was right here." Mark's expression shifted, panic flickering in his eyes. "We need to move, now. This can turn deadly." He didn't wait for a reply, dragging David past fallen bricks and distant wails. But David's mind raced back to Anthony. What had he said? The words echoed loudly, filling the air with unsettling truths. "You're just a pawn." But what did it mean? How deep did this deceit go? "Where's Emily, Mark?" he gasped, urgency clawing at his chest. Mark stole a glance back, his brow furrowing. "She's gone?" "You don't! No, we need to find her! We can't leave her!" They pushed through the haze, heartbeats sinking with their hurried steps. The world was chaos. Sirens blared, shadows moved against the flickering streetlights, and the rain mixed with dust and smoke. That's when they stumbled upon it. The twisted wreckage of cars, shattered glass littering the pavement, and a crushing weight of fear settled in David's gut. "Look!" Mark shouted, pointing. From the wreckage, a figure emerged, soaked and bloody, limping. David's heart leaped. Emily. But as she stumbled closer, mud staining her clothes, something in her expression twisted the air between them. Her eyes, once full of light, now shone with a desperation he had never seen. But it wasn't just fear. There was something else. "David," she breathed, panic-stricken, but her gaze drifted behind him, searching. "Emily, what happened? Where did you go?" A lump formed in his throat. "What's going on?" As she moved closer, the flickering streetlight illuminated a glint of silver in her hand, a bloodied knife. She stumbled, fear twisting her features, and appeared to be pleading, but all he could do was stare. "Is that?" David choked. "What did you do?" She shook her head, backing away. "It's not what you think. I had to protect us." Then, in that harrowing moment, Anthony emerged from the shadows, his face pale, body trembling. "You don't understand. You don't know what's really at stake," he cried out, voice shaking with raw energy. Before David could react, Emily, driven by desperation, lunged forward, the knife poised. "Stay away from him," she screamed, the world slowing to a breath. "Stop!" Mark shouted, stepping between them. David's heart raced, confusion swirling. "What is this? What did I miss?" In the cacophony of the night, the impossible happened. Emily's knife fell from her hand, clattering against the pavement. But it wasn't the knife that shocked David. With one quick move, Anthony ripped off a mask, revealing a face that turned David's world upside down. It was his brother, Michael. "Michael?" David whispered, disbelief washing over him. The air twisted, a sinister rush of confusion soaring through him. What the hell is happening? Truth shattered beneath the weight of the revelation, leaving David gasping in the storm of secrets and lies. What had he stumbled into? And how would this night transform everything he believed? David stared at Michael in disbelief. The world spun for a moment, confusion unwinding within him like the slow drip of a broken faucet. "Michael? What the hell is going on?" The tension crackled in the air, thick as the smoke from the wreckage. "David, listen to me." Michael's voice grabbed at his throat, urgent and desperate. "Emily is caught in something way deeper than you know. She's not just any woman. You have to believe me." "This is insane," David shouted, his heart racing. "How can I trust anything you say? You show up disguised and—" But before he could finish, Emily lunged forward, grabbing David's arm. "You need to stay away from him." Her eyes were wild, darting back and forth, as if searching for a path out of this mess. "He's not who you think he is. None of this is what it seems." David felt the tension of the moment wrap around him, like a vice. "Say what you mean, Emily. What's happening?" "Michael's not just my ex," she blurted out, fear pooling in her eyes. "He's part of a larger game, a dangerous web of lies and deceit." "What game?" David felt every heartbeat pounding in his ears, disbelief churning in his gut. Michael took a step closer, fists clenched. "Emily was brought into this because of her ties to something much bigger, a syndicate, David. You are in over your head. She's been trying to escape, but it's deeper than just love. She's protected you from the truth for your safety. You're a target now." David felt the ground shift underneath him. A target? Emily's face swam in front of him. The woman he thought was vulnerable, now caught in a storm he couldn't fathom. "Why didn't you tell me?" He felt the heat rise in his chest, almost choking him. Why lie? Emily's face faltered, every ounce of bravado evaporating. "Because I loved you. I thought I could leave it behind. But Michael, he knows things." And then it happened. The sky rumbled and the loudest crack of thunder shattered the night. It wasn't a natural occurrence. Something darker loomed overhead. A black van screeched around the corner, tires squealing as it careened directly toward them. David's instincts kicked in. He pulled Emily closer as chaos erupted. "Get down!" Mark shouted, but the world exploded. The van crashed into their location, and everything blurred into a swirl of lights, screams, and deafening metal. When the dust settled, David blinked through the haze, breathless. Did they survive? But in an instant, the unexpected unfolded. Emerging from the wreckage of the van was a familiar face, one he'd seen only in slivers of memory, long buried and forgotten. His mother. "David!" she cried, her voice raw and wild. The world twisted again, questions darting through David's mind like electric shocks. "You were wrong to let her in," she wailed, eyes wide and frantic. "You don't understand the danger. They're coming for you both." "Mom?" he stammered, everything tumbling down. "What do you mean?" Suddenly, it all tangled together. Michael, Emily, the shadowy figures lurking. The past rolled back like a cruel tide, drowning him in every choice he'd made. What have I stepped into? The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered, as Emily's face twisted in anguish. "Run! They'll know we're here," she urged, pulling him away from the chaos that started to erupt again. "David, go!" Michael shouted, urgency creeping into his voice. For the second time that night, everything crashed down. Surrounded by shadows of betrayal and flickering memories, David was left with an undeniable truth. Everything he thought he knew was a fragile illusion, ready to collapse with the night. David stood there, heart in a vise, confusion swirling like the smoke around him. "We need to go," he repeated, urgency tearing at him, but fear rooted him to the spot as Emily backed away, away from everyone. "David, we can't trust him," she cried, glancing at Michael, desperation etched into every line of her face. But Michael shook his head, his voice gravelly, eyes urgent. "Listen, this isn't just about you two anymore. If they find out where you are..." Before he could finish, a resounding crack filled the air. It was like a thunderclap, but worse. A shadow fell over them and everyone froze. David looked up instinctively. From the smoke and chaos, a figure emerged. Tall and broader than anyone else, shrouded in darkness. The rain smeared the outline, but there was something familiar in the way he moved. David's heart thudded painfully against his ribcage. Who? And then the glow of the streetlight reflected off the figure's face, sharp as glass. "Dad?" David's voice choked on the word. It was his father, standing before him, drenched, eyes blazing with a crazed intensity. "What are you doing here?" David stumbled back, pulse racing with shock. "Everything you think you know is a lie," his father shouted over the din. "Emily, you took him from me!" "No!" Emily gasped, the knife slipping from her fingers, clattering to the wet ground. "No, I didn't! Enough, David's father barked, cutting her off like a whip. You're part of this. You all are. You think hiding can keep you safe? The air thickened with tension, fear coiling around them. Mark gripped David's shoulder, a silent warning. But David couldn't look away. What are you talking about? He pointed back and forth between Emily and his dad, disbelief crackling in the damp air. What the hell is happening? But before anyone could respond, a piercing siren cut through the night, pulling their attention like a magnet. Damn it, Mark swore, turning to scan for escaping routes. We need to go now. Then David's world shattered a second time. You don't understand, their father yelled, voice rising. Emily was part of this from the start. She's been playing you, just like the rest of us. What do you mean? David shouted, mind racing. This isn't a game. Yes, it is. You're all pawns. You think you're my son? Think again. The words dropped like stone, reverberating in David's chest. No! Emily screamed, stepping toward David. But there was something in her eyes. Fear, anger, something darker. It's not true. I loved you. In that instant, time seemed to stretch. David's heart stuttered. Just then, the ground shook. An explosion rocked the street. Debris rained down like confetti. David spun, eyes wide, throat tight with panic. The figure of his father flickered in his vision, and the world blurred again. He grabbed Emily, yanking her closer. What do I believe? What's real? But before she could respond, the shadows erupted. The night split open, and figures emerged from the darkness without warning, their faces hidden. Part of the game his father spoke of. They moved like smoke, a collective hatred brewing. Run! Mark shouted, shoving them away. David stumbled, his heart pounding, each breath like an electric shock. David! Emily cried, reaching for him through the chaos. But as he turned, he saw Michael slipping into the shadows, poised with the glinting knife in hand. Don't trust him! Emily screamed. But David didn't know who to believe anymore. And just as David took a step forward, the world exploded into chaos again. A gunshot rang out. Everyone froze. David's heart stopped. He turned, breathless, and in that instant, the fragments of his world shattered, revealing the truth woven so deeply into the fabric of their lives. A shocking realization coursed through him. He had to choose. Who was a pawn? Who was a player? And in this deadly game of shadows and lies, who would survive the night? He had never felt so alone. David stood there, heart racing, surveying the chaos around him. The gunshot echoed painfully in his ears. Emily's eyes were wide with fear, tears streaming down her cheeks. David, we have to run. But he was frozen, caught between the past and the terrifying present. Michael, the brother he thought he knew, was standing there with a knife. The revelation, so stark and ugly, spun his reality off its axis. And then his father was shouting, everything crashing down around them, reality fraying at the edges. He turned, gripping Emily's arm tighter. What do you mean I'm a pawn? Because, Michael's voice trembled as he took a step toward them. You have no idea who she really is. Before David could process that, another explosion rocked the street, sending debris flying. He flinched instinctively, pulling Emily closer. The air filled with smoke and chaos. Screams mixed with the sirens growing louder. Get down, Mark shouted, tackling David and Emily to the ground as the world erupted around them. But just as quickly as the chaos began, it shifted. Emerging through the smoke was a tall figure, silhouetted against the flames licking at the shattered buildings. As the smoke cleared, David's breath caught in his throat. It was his mother again. But she wasn't just there. She moved with purpose, fierce and unyielding. David, listen to me. You and Emily, you have to come with me now. David felt a twist of panic in his chest. Mom, what are you doing? This isn't the time. I'm sorry, she cried, rushing forward, determination flooding her eyes. But you don't understand. It's bigger than any of us. It's a trap. A trap? The word slapped his mind like a shock. Who's trying to trap us, Mom? In that heartbeat, the air crackled like electricity. The answers hung in the air, heavy and almost tangible. David's heart raced as he pieced it all together. The lies, the secrets. Everything felt out of reach. Then came a flash, brilliant and blinding. Everything halted. The world blurred into a white haze. David felt a burning sensation whip around him, as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling. He shielded his eyes. When the light faded, he found himself in an empty, sterile room. The walls glowed with an eerie fluorescent light, and he blinked against the sudden change. He pulled Emily closer, but she looked just as dazed. "David?" she whispered, a quiver in her voice. "Where are we?" And that's when he noticed. It wasn't just the two of them. Michael stood across the room, his expression morphed from anger to confusion. Mark was there too, and even his father, who looked just as bewildered as they did. Everyone was there, but the positions had shifted. But worse was what pulled his attention. In the corner of the room sat a small table, a flickering screen casting shadows on the faces of everyone present. Words danced across the display, Operation Exodus, and below a list of names. Each name hit like a punch. His name, Emily's, his father's, Michael's, and even Mark's. "What's happening?" David gripped Emily's arm tighter. "Why are we here?" And then it hit him. A collective gasp echoed around the room. His mother stepped forward, her expression pained. "You were all chosen, David, to play a part in this." Chosen? Every muscle in his body tensed. "For what?" "War. A war you never imagined," she said quietly, eyes shimmering with something darker. Suddenly, Michael broke in. "They've been watching us, each one of us, for years." The tension hung heavy, silence wrapping around them like a shroud. David shook his head, disbelief clawing at him. "This doesn't make sense." "Does it ever?" his father shot back, fury bubbling beneath the surface. "But it's the truth." At that moment, the screen flickered again, revealing images, faces, families, people they recognized, surrounding them, eyes filled with betrayal, anguish, and hate. People who had once been friendly, and others whispering secrets. Emily's face fell, her voice fractured. "We're part of something that was never our choice." And then, as if in sync, they all turned to look at David. The weight of expectation, guilt, and fear pressed down on him. It all came back. This was no longer an accident. This was destiny. "What does that mean for us?" he asked, voice trembling. But no one answered. Instead, the screen glowed brighter, and he felt the walls close in as they all stood frozen, staring at their intertwined fates. David realized the truth. It was just beginning. Together or apart. "It's the choice we make that defines us," Michael said quietly, eyes fixed on the screen. And as shock and realization flooded his senses, David understood. Everything he thought was real had just shifted like sand, leaving him with one undeniable truth. This was just the start of their fight. But who were they really fighting against? The room buzzed with a silence so thick it choked him. Thoughts scrambled like leaves in the wind. "Ready?" David felt the words tumble out, a whisper of uncertainty. But the answer was clear. They were something different now. Something bigger than love, bigger than betrayal. And in that moment, he knew things would never be the same. The shadows were closing in, and the truth was only beginning to emerge. David stared at the screen, the harsh light casting shadows across everyone's faces. The names glowed ominously, each one a reminder of how deeply they were intertwined in this dark game. Tension thickened the air, wrapping around them like a suffocating fog. Emily's fingers trembled against his arm, and David felt the weight of her fear resonating in his chest. "What now?" he whispered, glancing between Emily, Michael, and his parents, anxiety swirling like the chaotic storm outside. They were trapped, physically and emotionally, in a nightmare with no clear escape. But before anyone could voice a plan, the screen flickered again, momentarily freezing their hearts. The image changed. Now, it showed a live feed of a crowded city square, bright lights reflecting off rain-slicked pavement. Movie theater marquees, people milling about, buzzing with life. And then, amidst that normalcy, a dark figure stepped into frame, cloaked in shadows. The figure turned slightly, and a shockwave passed through the room. David gasped. "Is that?" It was unclear, the features obscured, but there was no mistaking the silhouette. "No, it can't be." "It is," Michael said with a hollow certainty, eyes locked to the screen. "It's them." As the figure moved closer, the image sharpened. David held his breath. The face became undeniable. It was a man he thought he would never see again. A man lost to the past. "It's him, my father." David couldn't keep the confusion and horror from seeping into his voice. The group went silent, every eye glued to the screen. The man looked weathered, skin drawn tight over bones, eyes darting with purpose. He wasn't just a ghost, he was alive. "What is he doing there?" David turned to his mother, desperation leaking from his words. "Why is he—" "There's something you don't know," she said, trembling slightly. "About him, about everything." But before she could explain, the feed shifted again. The camera zoomed in, revealing a small device in his father's hands, something that twinkled ominously, like a bomb ticking down. "Get back!" Mark shouted, pushing David and Emily to the side as he lunged for the screen. "That can't be good." As if on cue, the display buzzed loudly, the static humming eerily. David's heart raced. "What do you mean, he's here? He was gone. How can this be happening?" I thought he was dead," David's mother stammered, holding her head like it might burst. "But he's been involved this whole time, David, in ways we never saw." Time slowed as his father's voice echoed in a chilling tone from the speakers, laced with menace. "You think you can escape me? You don't know what I've done. None of you do." The room became a cage of shock. A cacophony of gasps, disbelief, and fear collided. "They've been manipulating us," murmured Michael, voice nearly cracking. "We're not just pieces. We're targets." Then everything went dark. The lights flickered and faded, enveloping them in an ominous blackness that gripped their throats. Panic surged through David like a current. "What's happening?" It was a question full of terror. Then, the unthinkable, a sharp pain sliced through David's chest. He stumbled back, hand instinctively reaching for the wound that hadn't yet formed. A phantom ache, yet so real it stole his breath. As if sensing it, Emily turned, eyes wide with horror. "David." The darkness pulsed and flickered like the heartbeat of a dying fire. David fell to his knees, shock and disbelief washing over him. No, this can't be real. But deep inside he felt it, a festering betrayal, a truth that shook him to his core. "David, stay with me." Emily's voice shattered his thoughts, pulling him back from the edge. But the room swirled, and he fought to hold on as shock flooded him. Every moment with her played out in his mind. Each laugh, each kiss, a kaleidoscope of memories tainted by this new truth. Then, in the haze, she fell to her knees beside him. Their eyes locked, and in that moment it was clear. "What are we?" she whispered, fear cracking her voice. From the shadowy recesses, Michael stepped forward, confusion etched across his face. "We're all connected. It's more than blood. We're pawns, spun in a web that demands sacrifice. And just as the weight of those words settled over them like fog, the monitor flickered back to life. Strapped to a gurney in a dimly lit room, a woman with familiar features blinked back at them, eyes bright with acknowledgement. David's breath caught. Mom? But she wasn't the only one displayed. A dozen faces appeared, all familiar, all entangled in this web of lies. It was a gallery of the past, and now everything David thought was truth unraveled into strands of deception. As realization crashed down on him, the ground rolled beneath, and he could do nothing but stare at the screen, shocked to the bone. What had they truly entered? A game? A war? A family betrayal? And the biggest question, who were they really fighting against? The answers swirled beyond reach, just shadows waiting to pull them into the depths. All he could do was hold on to Emily, heart racing, as the storm of uncertainty raged on. David stared at the screen, heart racing. The faces flickered like memories he couldn't quite grasp. Emily's hand trembled in his, her warmth contrasting with the cold fear surging between them. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. It felt like the walls were closing in, like time itself was trembling under the weight of their uncertain future. "I don't know." David's voice was thick, throat tight with dread. This can't be real. But before he could process it all, the screen glitched, static buzzing ominously. David squinted as the image flickered again. Then, the figure on the screen turned to face them fully, and David's stomach dropped. It was a familiar face, one he thought was simply a ghost of the past. His heart thudded hard against his chest. No, it can't be. Time slowed. Emily gasped, stepping back. "That's... Mom!" David choked out. "What are you doing there?" And just as confusion swirled around them like a dark cloud, the screen erupted in static, and the lights went out. For a beat, silence washed over them, heavy and suffocating. David strained to see anything, the silence clanging in his ears. "Is everyone okay?" Mark's voice sliced through the darkness, more a question than a command. Then, without warning, the ground shook, strong tremors like an earthquake catching them off guard. A thundering crash came from outside, sending vibrations through the air, and David forced his eyes toward the door, instinctively pulling Emily closer. "Get down!" Michael shouted, the urgency in his voice raking through the tension. And then the screams started. Horrified cries echoed through the room from somewhere distant and growing closer. The lights flickered back on, just in time for David to see the door explode inward. Splintered wood flew across the room as a familiar face stepped through the wreckage. "Dad!" David shouted, disbelief coursing through him. The emotion hit him like a slap, anguish twisting tightly in his chest. "Run, all of you!" his father's voice boomed, frantic yet authoritative. But what struck David was the look in his eyes. There was a wildness, a desperation that sent a jolt of fear rushing through him. "Why are you here? What did you do?" David felt his heart pounding as he faced the man he thought he knew. The air was thick with betrayal. They didn't get a chance to respond as figures poured in through the doorway. Dark silhouettes, their faces shrouded in shadow. It was chaos, screams, demands, a clash of bodies. Time fractured in an instant. The motions rode high as lights from outside danced erratically across their horrified faces. "Don't move," one of the intruders barked, confidence dripping from every word. "Get on the ground." But in that very moment, as fear gripped them all, David felt an unnatural shift in the atmosphere. His father stepped forward, and without a word, pulled something from his jacket. It glinted under the harsh light. A gun. "Dad, no!" David yelled, heart racing wildly in his chest. Everything hesitated, as if the universe itself drew a breath. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The lines blurred. Every truth he held on to twisted and warped before him. His father aimed it, but the gun wasn't pointed at them. It was aimed directly at the intruders. The shock left David reeling. "Why?" he whispered, voice barely above a breath. "What are you doing?" "Protecting you." His father's face twisted, a mix of rage and fear, something darker simmering beneath. "They want you, and they'll do anything to get you." The air crackled with tension, the intruder's eyes narrowing, his posture changing as he calculated his next move. Then, everything erupted into chaos. The gun fired, a loud crack that shattered the air, echoing like thunder. A figure fell, and time splintered again. David's mind raced. His heart hammered as everything spiraled out of control. The wave of shock gripped him. Disbelief washed away every thread of trust held onto just moments ago. And then it hit him hard. The truth was revealed in that cathartic explosion. They were not just players, but pawns in a deadly game of manipulation. But amidst the chaos, everything changed again. As David rushed to pull Emily to safety, he felt an icy hand clasping his heart, a sudden realization striking him like lightning. Every one of us is marked. In that instant, a dark figure moved toward his father, hidden completely behind shadows. And with a flash, a knife glinted in the dim light. The heart-stopping moment of dread twisted within him. "Dad, watch out!" But it was too late. The knife plunged deep, and everything came crashing down like a wave. Confusion and horror wrapped around David. The ground felt like it spun beneath his feet. His reality shattered into a million pieces as he cried out, and the darkness began to swallow them whole. Everything they believed was built on shaky ground, a house of cards just waiting for the storm. As the chaos ensued, questions flooded David's mind. Who could be trusted? What were their true roles? And as his father crumbled, the very fabric of their lives unraveled like a worn thread. A new war was rising, and this was only the beginning. Where would it lead them? David stared at the chaos unfolding before him. His father, blood-soaked and staggering, clutched his side as panic washed over the room like a wave. Time hung heavy as disbelief paralyzed everyone in place, every heartbeat an eternity. "Get down!" Mark shouted, pushing everyone to the floor, as if the sound of a gunshot somehow made them all targets. The air thickened with fear. David's heart hammered in his chest. Each beat a reminder of the nightmare spiraling out of control. Emily clutched his arm, her eye. "This can't be happening," she whispered, trembling. Screams echoed through the chaotic entryway. The would-be intruders surged forward, shadows flickering in the doorway. David felt a surge of instinct. He needed to protect Emily. He had to protect his family. The room felt too small, walls closing in, suffocating under the weight of confusion and terror. "Move!" David yelled, pulling Emily close as they scrambled toward the back exit. But just as they turned, the world shattered into chaos again. The sound of a second gunshot rang out, not a bang, but a deafening pop, followed by glass shattering. Time skewed. Just a few feet away, in a blur of confusion, David watched as his father dropped to the ground, blood pooling around him, eyes wide with shock. "Dad!" The word tore from David's throat, desperation clawing at him. He shot forward, ignoring everything else as he knelt beside his father. "No, stay with me," he cried, shock morphing into fury. "What did you do?" But the answer twisted in the air, dark and complicated. Confusion and clarity intermingled in David's mind, swirling like a storm. In that chaotic moment of panic, a thought began to surface, a realization that threatened to shatter him. Then came another voice, crisp and clear as a bell amidst the chaos. "Back away." David turned to see a figure striding through the doorway, a woman, fierce and commanding. She wore a dark suit that clung to her like armor, and her eyes were piercing. "Everyone out, now!" Her words cut through the fear like a knife, strong and steady. But it wasn't just her presence that held power. There was something oddly familiar. "Who are you?" David gasped, heart racing. The room felt heavy, her approach almost magnetic. And then it hit him, a jolt of recognition. "Wait, you're something." In a heartbeat, it all unraveled. She peeled back her hair to reveal a small, flickering tattoo on her neck, a symbol he knew well. His breath hitched as the realization crashed down. "You're part of the Syndicate!" "David, we don't have time for this," Emily cried, dragging him back as shadows loomed closer. The urgency in her voice cut through the haze, but the words fell flat against the backdrop of his shock. "Stay back," the woman snapped, taking a step forward as a dark figure came up behind her, a man with a cruel smile, eyes glinting with malice. David's heart sank. Then, in a dizzying blur of events, the woman reached for a hidden weapon. "I'm your only chance," she barked, pointing at David, who fell back, stunned. The entire weight of everything spun out of control. "Enough games!" The man behind her lunged. With a swift movement, the woman turned, revealing a single dart gun. "No!" David yelled, his voice breaking. But it was too late. The dart fired. That split second hung in the air like a dream, the silence stretching thin. With perfect accuracy, it struck the woman in the neck, and in an instant, she crumpled to the ground, eyes wide open, filled with betrayal. David was left gasping, horror spreading like wildfire through his veins. Everything shifted again. The air became thick and suffocating as the room spun around him. Emily gasped, fear written all over her face. "No! What just happened?" And in that shocking moment, electricity coursed through the air, rupturing the very fabric of their reality. The woman on the ground wasn't just any player. She was an agent of change. David's world fractured. He had never felt more lost. Each connection, each relationship, now a ticking time bomb. Who was he really fighting? Who could he trust? "Get out!" Emily screamed, pulling him toward the exit again. But the sirens were screaming louder now, the world around them a blur of chaos. In that moment, everything changed. As they ran, David felt a pulse of awareness. This wasn't just a game anymore. This was war. And now it was personal. The shadows chased them, but in his heart, David knew there was more at stake than just their lives. Somewhere in this twisted game, buried deep in the chaos, lay answers he could never have anticipated. What more could he lose? What secrets still waited to crumble around him? The path ahead remained dark, shrouded in uncertainty. But one thing was clear. There was no going back, and he was determined to uncover the truth. David felt the weight of fear pushing down on him. Chaos erupted around them. The sirens blared, shadows danced, and screams pierced the air. He grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her toward the back exit, desperate to escape this nightmare. "Stay close," he urged, heart racing. They burst through the door into the dark alley. Rain poured down, washing away the blood of the fallen and the memories of betrayal. But as they stepped into the night, a haunting realization struck him. "Where's Michael?" David felt fear clutch his heart. He turned back, searching the shadows. "We can't leave him!" "David!" Emily cried, tugging him away. "We have to go, now!" But he couldn't. His brother was still inside, lost in that chaotic storm. "I won't abandon him!" David yelled, determination burning through his fear. And just then, Michael staggered out through the doorway, blood on his shirt, eyes wild. "Run!" he shouted, pointing back at the alley. "They're coming!" David's heart dropped. "What did you do?" But even as he asked, he knew. He could see the guilt and anger etched on Michael's face. "You put us all in danger." There's no time for this, Emily interjected, stepping between them. We either fight together or we'll all end up dead. Behind them, shouts echoed, threats filled the air, and the darkness thrummed with danger. David glanced at Michael, searching for answers, and saw despair. Trust me, David. Please. Michael's voice broke, raw and urgent. We can't let them win. Then let's make sure we don't, David shouted, heart racing. They turned, sprinting down the alley, the rain soaking their clothes as they pressed forward. Every step felt heavy, but deep inside, a spark ignited. They were brothers, blood-bound, regardless of the secrets twisting between them. They burst onto the street, crowds scattering in panic. David felt exposed, vulnerable, like a target. But in that chaos, a thought struck him. He needed to confront their father. Everything led back to him. Where's he going? He mumbled, scanning the shadowy figures in the distance. We have to stop him. I'll hold them off, Michael shouted, grabbing his arm. You take Emily. Find a place to hide. No way, David snapped back, shaking his head. We stand together. No, you don't understand, Michael's voice cracked, desperation creeping in. I can buy you time, but you have to make it count. Find the truth, with or without you, David shot back. But Michael already turned, determination etched in fear. Just go. Right then, they heard the voices closing in, menacing and cruel. And just like that, David and Emily ran again, the sounds of chaos fading behind them. They weaved through the crowd, searching for a place to hide. Where do we go? Emily gasped, glancing up at him, eyes wide with fear. The old warehouse, it's nearby, he shouted. Stay close. Pushing through the throng, they ducked into an alley, adrenaline surging uncontrollably. As they neared the warehouse, something flickered in the shadows. A figure emerged, a woman, fierce and ready. Holding a weapon, she raised an eyebrow, gauging them. Are you with them? She demanded, voice low and threatening. David stepped forward. No, forget it, come on! She grabbed them, ushering them inside. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing out the chaos. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. It was dimly lit, the air thick and tense. Who are you? David demanded, panting. I'm someone who knows your father's game, the woman replied harshly. You're playing it, whether you like it or not. Abruptly, a series of loud knocks echoed outside. David's breath caught. What do we do? Back door, move, she ordered, leading them through a winding path toward safety. Just before they stepped outside, her eyes met David's. One thing, you must end this. You cannot trust your father. I need to find him, David declared, tightening his grip on Emily's hand. Then do what you must, she replied, pushing them out into the storm again. Fight for the truth. I'll distract them. Thank you, Emily called, but the woman was already disappearing into the shadows. David and Emily were back on the gritty streets, heart pounding in rhythm with the rain. We end this tonight, David declared, resolve igniting in his chest. But the question lingered, haunting. Could they ever emerge from this darkness? They rushed through the city's underbelly, determination fueling them as the night raged on. Whatever awaited them, whatever truths lingered in the shadows, they wouldn't face it alone. As they neared the rendezvous point, echoes of footsteps thundered behind them, a cold reminder of how close danger lived. David, Emily gasped suddenly. Look! A shadow loomed, too familiar, rendering him breathless. Dad, he shouted, heart racing against the storm. The truth was out there, tangled in the web of lies. And there they stood, ready for the ultimate confrontation. A fight for everything they had lost, everything they could save. But as they prepared to enter the fray, uneasy thoughts churned within David. Would they finally uncover the truth, or would they sink further into the pit? You must subscribe now to catch the next thrilling chapter of this saga. Smash that like button to boost us against the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. What do you think happens next? And don't wait one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know this ending. Your support means the world to us. Let's unravel this mystery together.